So, I'm non-binary.
Who the fuck starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
Dragon Age the Veilguard has been under fire all across social media, and for good reason. The game is full of clunky dialogue, cringe-worthy jokes, forced political messaging, you name it. Yet access media outlets are hailing it as some kind of grand return to form for BioWare, which, judging by player counts and actual fan feedback, couldn't be further from the truth. Dragon Age has always been a franchise known for its complex characters and immersive storytelling. Fans expected the Veilguard to deliver the same magic, but instead, it feels like a soulless attempt to capitalise on nostalgia, missing the mark from what made Dragon Age truly special to begin with. Eric Kane from Forbes recently published a refreshingly honest article calling out the same preachy messaging and out-of-place dialogue that fans have been complaining about since the official trailer was released. And while access media outlets are desperately trying to paint the Veilguard as a potential game of the year, the actual player response in regards to feedback and player numbers tells a very different story, as do the independent reviews. Now let's talk about that scene, the infamous apology moment with Isabella.
Ah, shit. They're still holding it, sorry.
What are you doing?
Pulling a barb.
Oh. Okay. A barb?
Tradition in the Lords of Fortune, from one of our old members, Barv. Good guy, but like most of us, his plans went sideways a lot. Bad blood among your crew's not good for morale, but there's not always time for big drawn-out apologies. So, when one of us screws up and we know we've screwed up, we do a quick 10 to put it right. Pulling a Barv.
Here we have a character who's meant to be tough, morally complex figure, and suddenly she's performing push-ups as penance for misgendering Tash. But of course, it doesn't stop there. She actually takes the time to lecture the entire party on how to properly apologise. And as if that wasn't enough, they throw around the term non-binary, a word that feels jarringly out of place in Dragon Age, which is of course a medieval fantasy world far removed from our reality. Moments like these are supposed to add depth to characters, but here it comes off as shallow and performative. And the worst part is Isabella's condescending explanation of how an insincere apology ends up being all about the person making the apology and not the one receiving it. This is all whilst making the entire apology, of course, all about her. When was the last time you saw a heartfelt apology that came with a lecture on apology etiquette? I don't think I've ever seen one. Now, contrast this with Krem from Dragon Age Inquisition. Krem was a character whose identity as a trans man was revealed subtly, naturally, and only if players chose to explore that part of the story. There was no grand look at us, we're progressive moment, just a well-written character with a backstory that added to the world instead of shoving modern labels in our faces. That's what made Krem's character powerful. His identity was there for players who wanted to know more, but it wasn't a lecture. It was a part of him that made sense within the story and fit within the lore of Dragon Age. It made the character authentic. Meanwhile, the Veilguard treats the players like children, as it seems to think that if you don't spell out every identity trait, players will simply miss it. And BioWare already had a perfect tool for handling these themes within the Dragon Age lore. The term Akun Athlok, which was used in Inquisition to describe a Canary whose gender doesn't conform to typical standards. Imagine for 1 second if Tash had been introduced using Akun Athlok, which would have tied her to the existing Dragon Age lore. It would have not only fit seamlessly, but also honoured the storytelling groundwork laid by previous games. Instead, as we know, the writers opted for the term a non-binary, which is of course a modern day term. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm exploring a fantasy realm filled with dragons, ancient magic, and deep lore, hearing modern terminology like non-binary just yanks me straight out of the immersion. For me, this move shows a lack of respect for the fans who care deeply about Dragon Age's world building. It's like they wanted the brownie points of representation without putting in any actual effort to integrate it meaningfully in a way that already existed within Dragon Age's lore to begin with. It would have been a well-received nod to the writers of Inquisition. However, as we know, they chose to ignore already established lore And that's if they even knew it existed to begin with, which I doubt they did. And this isn't just a one-off problem in the Veilguard. Time and time again, the game sacrifices actual storytelling for heavy-handed political messages. Instead of letting characters grow through their experiences, they're basically reduced to mouthpieces delivering scripted monologues on modern-day issues. Dragon Age used to let its characters breathe, with their flaws and complexities, without needing to spell out every model lesson to the player. In fact, in previous BioWare games, players had the option to make meaningful choices that impacted their relationships with other characters. In the Veilguard, it appears that every interaction with your companions has been curated in such a manner that even the negative options are minimized as not to offend a fictional character's feelings. Every group discussion feels like a millennial wrote their impression of a Gen Z therapy session, all whilst injecting Marvel's brand of humour. Whereas in Origins or Inquisition, players had the freedom to make choices that impacted relationships, for better or for worse. Here, it simply feels like every choice is sanitized to avoid hurting fictional feelings, making all these interactions feel far less authentic. Players are here for epic stories, deep characters, and a world that feels real, not to have modern ideology shoved down our throats. So where does that leave the Veilguard in the grand scheme of Dragon Age games? The Veilguard was supposed to bring the Dragon Age franchise back to its roots, but instead, it feels more like a hollow imitation of what came before. Lore, character depth, and storytelling have all taken a backseat to forced politics and out-of-place dialogue. If BioWare wants to win back the fans, they need to remember what made Dragon Age special. Authentic characters, immersive stories, and a world that felt truly alive. But anyway, what do you think? Have you played Dragon Age the Veilguard? Do you agree with these comments? Do you have a different opinion? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Otherwise, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye for now.